Hey everybody, thank you for clicking on this video. Today we are going to be reviewing The Comfort Crisis. Now this is a book by Michael Easter, and I had this book sent to me by my sister-in-law, and I think this is the most interesting book I've probably read all year, and I'll go over the reasons why, but it just kind of changed my way of thinking on a few things related to how you should treat your body, how you should eat, how you should exercise, and offered a really cool historical context to the reasons why we should do those things in the way he suggests we do them. And he referenced multiple people on his journey in writing this book that helped him formulate the mindset for this way of thinking. So let's touch on just a few of the points that he goes over that kind of stuck with me. First, I'll mention the book is structured around something called a misogi, and a misogi is an incredibly difficult task that you take on. The idea behind it is that the task is supposed to be so difficult that once you've completed it, or at least attempted it, it allows you to put the rest of your life in perspective and understand how you can take on your life with greater confidence. So an example of a misogi in the book that they mention is a couple of guys went out on the west coast of California and they put a 80-pound boulder into the ocean about 7 feet deep. So you could at least get to it, but you'd have to swim under the water. And what they did is they had, I think it was 4 or 5 guys, and a guy would swim under the water, pick up the 80-pound boulder, and carry it as far as he possibly could. And then once he was done, he would, or, once he ran out of breath or physically exerted himself to the point of exhaustion, he would exchange the boulder with somebody else. Somebody else would go down, pick it up, and carry it as far as he could. And they did this, I think, for 25 miles right along the coast of California. And so something that difficult, carrying a boulder underwater for 25 miles, that would be a misogi type of event. And the one that Michael Easter goes on in The Comfort Crisis is he goes with 2 other guys into the Arctic Circle. Part of the Arctic Circle they're in is the northern part of Alaska. And their plan is to stay there for an entire month. And they're going to be hunter-gatherers and, forage off of the land and traverse through the Arctic and try and survive. And they have to hunt wild caribou, and they have to not be hunted by, grizzly bears, things like that. Wolves, they're out there. The whole concept of it is it offers, it puts you on the edge of danger. And there are 2 rules that they identified in the book. Those rules are there can be no greater chance of 50% that you succeed at your misogi, and death should be impossible. So they put plans in place in order to keep them from dying, and there should be about a 50-50 split of whether you can actually do this or not. And one of the guys that Michael Easter does this with, his name is Donnie, and he's kind of the expert of the woods, if you will. He does this a couple times per year and knows the terrain pretty well. And he read The Happiness Hypothesis by Jonathan Haidt, and he mentioned that part of that book explains that the harder a task is for you to do, the harder it is for you to complete, the greater sense of fulfillment you'll get in completing it. So we have the misogi in the middle of the book. That's kind of our base narrative here. And the experiences that he encounters during his misogi are kind of like small little branches off of the main narrative that he's telling. And these small little branches are what are really, really cool about this book, because he tells you, he goes to see an expert about nutrition, he goes to see an expert about the misogi itself, he goes to see an expert about dieting. He sees someone who enjoys exercising with ruck packs, like these backpacks that can hold, between 20 and 100 pounds, because when he's out there, that's what he's going to be doing. He's going to be essentially like a member of the military, just out there with a sack on his back, and he's going to have to go through the wilderness with that. And then when they hunt, he's going to have to carry additional weight. He's going to have to carry like an animal carcass and things like that. So he's got to be prepared for all of these things. And he shows you his conversations with the experts in their field in preparing him leading up to all of these things he's going to encounter in the wild. And the one that I really enjoyed, maybe the most, is his encounter with a man who really teaches him about proper nutrition and processed foods. And the bit about processed foods in this book, I think for most of us will change the way we think about food in general. And something I didn't realize was everybody has their own definition of processed food. And if you were to be in a room of 100 people and ask each one of them, hey, what's processed food? You're going to get a slew of answers. And it was really interesting to see this guy really explain what processed food is, how it's way more nuanced than just saying, oh, it's food that has preservatives in it or it's sprayed with chemicals or whatnot. It's much more nuanced than that. In fact, basically all foods are processed in some way, shape, or form, even the organic ones. And understanding that was really interesting. And this narrative that there are foods that are pure and eating organic is the best way to go because it's not processed. It's like, well, I mean, what's your definition of processed, right? Because it's processed to a degree, and we do need processed food. Processing food keeps it fresh longer and allows us to transport food to areas of the world that wouldn't normally have access to that food. So we have to process food even just a little bit in order to, move it around the world and provide that service to people. So the section on food was really interesting. Section on exercising was also really interesting. And throughout the book, there's these little nuggets of wisdom that I really enjoyed, that I wrote down. They're kind of randomly peppered throughout the book, so I'll share a few with you here. But Americans spend 93% of their time indoors. That doesn't surprise me at all, especially during COVID. I think that a lot of people work from home now, and we enjoy the comfort, no pun intended, of the things that we have in our house. So that does not surprise me at all. We're psychologically built to produce a quote-unquote comfort creep. Now, comfort creep is when we subconsciously stop accepting the comforts that we previously enjoyed and we shift the goalposts in order to deem something as comfortable. So what was comfortable to us, last week, a year ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, we can shift the goalpost, and now that's not so comfortable anymore. People don't like living in cities as much as rural areas. Depression is higher in cities. New York is actually the worst city for depression. It ranks dead last in happiness among U.S. cities. I'm assuming that's mainly in part to the fact that most of our jobs are in cities, and a lot of well-paying jobs are in cities, so we're incentivized to move there in order to take advantage of certain economic opportunities. But the book also describes that we tend to gravitate toward tribes of around 150 people. If we connect ourselves to more than that, it tends to become overwhelming. The book mentions the sizes of Amish tribes in Pennsylvania, army units, social media followers, and on average, those three groups I mentioned, consist of about 150 people. Now, for social media, obviously, a lot of us have more than 150 followers combined with Instagram, Facebook, whatever. But in the context of that small 150 group of people, what he means is, over the course of our time building up that social media following, there are only about 150 people we would trust of that group to maybe have a beer with. Here's a quote I really love from the book. Fear is apparently a mindset often felt prior to experience. And it's something that I've had issues with dealing with basically throughout my life, is just new experiences and that fear we have around them, because a lot of it is just unknown, and the unknown scares us. And that's a human thing to experience, but there's something to that, where getting over that fear of new experiences, can open so many doors for you, and understanding that a lot of people go through that fear before a new experience. It's something that we all deal with. This book talks a lot about nature and goes into a lot of extensive bits about it. One really cool thing is that I figured out that nature is one of the best ways to sort of cleanse your body and mind. And there are multiple studies that the book mentions that say if you spend just about 20 minutes 3 times a week in nature, the effects are overwhelmingly positive. Groups of people who decided to take, 20-minute walk through nature, these groups were tested during and after their walks, and they found that their blood pressure decreased, their immune systems were strengthened, and their blood sugar decreased. And countries like Japan and Finland have really embraced this kind of outside culture, and they've built several parks within their countries for people to walk through, and they've really tailor-made them for this reason. There's also something called the 3-day effect, and this is really cool. So if you spend at least 3 days in nature, no phone, your brain switches from producing beta waves, which are crazy, like monkey bashing a cymbal kind of brainwaves to alpha and theta waves. Alpha and theta waves are brainwaves that are found in really skilled meditators. So think about that. Next time you're camping, 3 or 4 days without a phone, specifically after the third day, your brain will start producing these alpha and theta waves, completely different waves that they promote a completely different mindset. Your brain will slow way down and allow you to just kind of relax. Now, before I get to my last couple points, it'd be awesome if you guys could hit that subscribe button, like the video, and comment down below on your thoughts so far. If you've read the book, let me know what you thought of it. If you haven't, highly encourage you to pick up a copy. Again, that is The Comfort Crisis by Michael Easter. Really great book that touches on a lot of things relating to, body, mind, spirit. There's a couple things I want to go over before we wrap this up, and one of them is being comfortable with death. The book talks about how cultures who are happiest actually talk about death 3 times a day, or at least 3 times a day, and they make a point to recognize their own mortality. And there's a cultural difference with how the West handles death and how the East handles death. Now, in the West, we wear black, we're very gloomy, and when the funeral is over, we try and focus on the happy things and eat cake and get our mind off of it. Now, in the East, especially in Buddhist culture, they talk about death quite frequently, and they would, at a funeral, they would rather talk about someone's life and think about death and really meditate on that. They would rather do that than move on and enjoy the celebration. They place much more of an emphasis on the meditating and reflective aspect of a funeral. And they say that the more you focus on your own death, the more perspective you'll have on your life, and it will add kind of a newfound happiness to your overall mood. Just understanding that you have a finite amount of time on this earth completely changes your mindset. So, and it's not something that you have to practice this kind of meditation, and it might take a while to understand the true gravity of recognizing your own mortality. But he says that the people who are able to achieve this and practice it, frequently, just have an incredible peace of mind. I mentioned earlier an exercise portion of the book where he talks to a gentleman who runs his own business called Go Ruck. I'll show you this website here. So it's called Go Ruck, goruck.com. And I was checking it out earlier today. It's pretty cool. So you can buy all this gear, and they've got all these nice rucksacks. This is like the REI for rucking, basically. So, the prices aren't going to be cheap. You got $215 as basically your base price. But all of these hold weights in them. So click on one and check it out. You can see when you open it, that's the slot that the weight goes in. But look at this. I mean, you can put it over your head, do exercises that way. You got a guy just carrying it in a park there. Look at that one. That'd probably break my back. But anyway, rucking is essentially just putting, weighted backpack on, and you just start walking. And it's for people who don't like running and they don't like cardio. And it's also for people who don't like lifting a whole lot of weight and kind of getting into, that realm of exercise. And so this is a medium in between there that the author says people might enjoy if they don't like the extremes of either cardio or weightlifting. Before we go, I'll mention one other thing on exercising. If you work your brain during physical activity, it'll increase your stamina and endurance. And the book mentions several specific examples of this and a few studies to back it up as well. But this concept of cognitively working your brain at the same time that you exercise is a really interesting concept. And come to think of it, the reason why I think people tell you to focus on your breathing when you're exercising is because it gets your mind off of the physical exertion and it puts your mind on your breathing rhythm. And if you focus on that, you can kind of feel yourself not focusing on the pain as much, and you're just focusing on controlling your breath. But there are instances the book mentions where if you take on cognitively demanding tasks, that it will make certain things like in exercise easier for you to do. And you'll be able to push your body past your previously assumed limits. So that's just some of the things I found really, really interesting about this book, The Comfort Crisis. I definitely recommend you pick up a copy and read it. It's the most interesting book I've read all year, and I think it'll offer a new perspective on just how comfortable we've become truly, and how we can start to introduce, some discomfort into our life, and why that's healthy for us. And it's a great story. He offers a lot of good personal anecdotes, talks to a lot of experts and world-renowned scientists. So there's a lot of good data in there that he chooses to share with us, and I highly recommend it. Till then, everybody, stay safe, have fun, and we'll see you next time.